SmackDown on Fox was originally scheduled to take place at the Little Caesars Arena in Detroit, but Cyrus the Virus changed all of that. Instead, we got our first ever episode of SmackDown live from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando. And maybe the weirdest WWE show that I have ever seen in 30 plus years of watching the product, the first ever empty arena show. I've heard of empty arena matches. I've not seen a complete empty arena WWE show from start to finish, although there have been some SmackDown tapings over the years that were almost empty arenas, but not quite. They made the best of a bad situation, and they did so on very short notice, so credit to everybody involved who helped put the show together, and the talent. I'm sure it wasn't easy. And this may be the new norm going forward. Again, I said earlier, maybe several months of this, because I don't see things getting better in the near term. They had just shot NXT Live from the PC on Wednesday. Funny enough, unrelated to all of the coronavirus stuff, Full Sail just happened to not be available that day. And so they decided we're going to make this fan appreciation night, and they did an NXT show from the PC. Little did they know when they had Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa destroying part of the PC in that brawl on Wednesday, that they would have to get everything cleaned up in time to go live on Fox on Friday. They did the show without anybody in the stands, although it was a little unnerving because they had all the chairs set up. Like, they probably could have just done away with the chairs. Looked like a bunch of ghosts, bunch of John Cenas just sitting in the crowd. So you see all these empty seats, but there's no people. And the only people allowed there were essential staff, production crew, people like that. They didn't want to put anybody in harm's way who did not need to be there, which is why you didn't see any of the PC guys, NXT talent, just there as like seat fillers. The whole point was we only want essential staff. We don't want any fans in the crowd because we're not looking to put people at risk. So we got a sea of empty chairs. Triple H opened the show, introducing us to the Performance Center and telling us that they're going to do what they do best. They're going to put smiles on people's faces. Like a clown. No pyro, obviously. All the pyro people are going to be very upset. It could be months before we see pyro again. Actually, with all the money that the company stands to lose, we may never see pyro again. The whole point was pyro, they were cutting costs. They're going to probably have to start cutting costs again by the time this is all done and over with. So, anyway, not outside of Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't expect much pyro coming your way. But we did get lots of lasers. I thought they were broadcasting from a fucking bank vault. There were so many lasers. Triple H joined Michael Cole on commentary for what was only supposed to be one match. He ended up coming back out after the commercial break. So unless that was planned, it may have been a case where they saw the positive response that his commentary was getting on social media, and they just sent him back out there. He was easily one of the highlights of the entire show. I would not mind a Triple H Michael Cole announce combo on SmackDown, at least for as long as they have to run these empty building shows. There was a point where Cole must have run to the bathroom during a commercial break, and when they came back, Triple H said, luckily, they had not been affected by the run on toilet paper, and he patted Cole on the shoulder. He wore multiple hats on this show, did Triple H, and he played makeup artist at one point. He used a Sharpie to color in Michael Cole's soul patch, to turn it from gray to black. He even played cameraman at one point, told Cole they were shorthanded, and so he had to fill in. He said, we can't all just have one job and not be very good at it and still have a job, Cole. So he was just ragging on Cole the entire time. Look, they have a good relationship. If you ever watch any of the documentaries or specials on the PC and NXT, Michael Cole, you always see him sitting in on those meetings. So the two of them are constantly working together. Cole is a constant presence there at the Performance Center. They were just having fun. I think it came across that way on TV. Sasha Banks and Bayley, they were the first ones out, and this was just very weird. It felt like a Tough Enough audition. It was also weird to see them playing to the empty seats as though there were actually people in them, because that's what they've been trained to do. That's what they train you to do, right? You got to come out, you got to look here, you got to pose, you got to do all these things. But when there's no people in the stands and they continue to do it anyway, but look, it's their first time doing this. You got to cut them some slack. They wanted to know where Paige was. Paige was due to confront Bayley on this show, which was a very random thing for them to promote. I can't imagine that they've cleared her, but, Daniel Bryan got cleared and Edge got cleared, so if they want to clear a woman with scoliosis and screws in her neck, well, hey, that's on them. I don't think that's very wise, but that's on them. They claim that Paige had travel issues, so instead Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross came out. They cut a promo on them, which led to a tag team match playa. When they cut to commercial, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if they just kept wrestling or if they just stopped. Because without a live crowd, they could technically just stand there and go over their spots. And then when you get the 10-second countdown, you just start wrestling again. Well, somebody watching the international feed tweeted out a video from the break. And in case you were wondering, yes, indeed, they did stand there and they stopped wrestling during the break, and they were all just waiting to get their cue from the referee that they were coming back live. You could even hear Michael Cole and Triple H yapping, talking to each other on commentary. Brought me back to the days of the C-band satellite stuff 20 years ago during the Raw and SmackDown tapings. And, even before the shows, they would have the dark matches. And if you had the right channel for a certain satellite feed, you can watch all of this stuff. They would air stuff. It would get leaked online. People would upload videos. There were a whole bunch of Michael Cole ones from like the early 2000s and 2003, like around that period, with him and Lawler, him and Taz talking off the air. Asuka showed up, attacked Alexa outside the ring, which allowed Sasha to lock on the bank statement on Nikki for the submission win. Triple H said that Asuka blended in with the crowd, and because of that, nobody saw her coming. Michael Cole was in the ring to interview the big dog, Roman Reigns, about his match with Goldberg at WrestleMania. He brought up the critics not being happy with the way that he inserted himself into the WrestleMania main event. Several times they refer to this match as the main event of WrestleMania, so we know what match they think is the main event. And it ain't Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre. Even though Drew McIntyre actually won the Royal Rumble match, which is supposed to send you to the WrestleMania main event, but as many before him, Alberto Del Rio, Edge, Sheamus, been quite a few Royal Rumble winners who were promised the main event of WrestleMania, and they ended up opening the show. Or at least not going on last. But he asked, why is it okay? This is Roman now. Roman's answer to this was to ask, why is it okay for me to main event all of the live events, but not main event WrestleMania? I'm in Youngstown, Ohio. I'm in the main event. I'm in this city. I'm in that city. And I'm headlining everywhere I go. Why shouldn't I be in the main event of WrestleMania? That, by the way, is not a valid answer. That's the best they could come up with. To explain why, he just walks in and says to Goldberg, I'm next. And then, voila. He's the number one contender. He says, I'm full-time, Goldberg is part-time. He's a part-timer, and we just don't have time for that here, is what Roman Reigns said about Bill Goldberg. Or was he talking about John Cena? Oh, no, wait, maybe he was talking about The Undertaker. Oh, no, Edge. No, definitely Edge. He must have been talking about Edge. You could say the same damn thing about half the WrestleMania card this year. So, I thought as an environment to do a sit-down interview segment like this, it worked. I don't like it when they cut to a pre-tape, let's say with Cole or Renee Young or somebody sitting down to do an interview, and you can hear the crowd noise in the background. You could do that maybe sometimes. But you always hear the crowd noise. And I feel like sometimes it really does take away from some of these segments. When they got snowed in, and they had to do that one episode of Raw after the Royal Rumble, about 5 years ago, whatever it was, from Stamford, we got a Roman Reigns sit-down interview. And it was one of the better interviews that he has ever done. So this worked better, I think, than it would have worked if they had done this in front of the crowd. They risked having some people, the boo birds, who maybe didn't like his explanation, may have booed him. So I thought that worked. The material, though, is just, it's tired. Tired material. They're going with the same story I said they would a few weeks ago. A recycled version of the story that they used with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar going into WrestleMania 34 2 years ago. It's the same damn story. Trying to get Roman cheered by ragging on the other guy and saying, though, he's a part-timer. The only difference is this time it's babyface against babyface. I know they booed Goldberg a few weeks ago, but they were going to boo him that night no matter what. They were very unhappy that he beat The Fiend and took the championship. And now they won't have to worry. Whenever they put Goldberg on TV, he's going to be on SmackDown, I think, this week. Guess what? They're spared. They don't have to worry about a negative crowd reaction because there's no fucking crowd. Who could have predicted that? But they get no crowd. So they can basically put these guys out there and tell whatever story they want and not have to worry about the fans sabotaging it, booing both guys out of the building. I had some people say to me, do you think that their match at WrestleMania is going to be basically a repeat of Goldberg and Brock Lesnar from WrestleMania 20, where the fans don't like either guy and they boo them out of the building? No, not unless they postpone WrestleMania until later in the year. If they move ahead with it, they don't have to worry about it. They no longer have to worry about those crowd reactions. You could say that's a good thing. You could say that's a bad thing. As I said earlier, wrestling, the crowd is part of the show, good, bad, or indifferent. You take the crowd away, yeah, maybe you can dictate now, the kind of reaction that you want to get. I'm not so sure that no reaction, though, is always the best reaction. But that's where we are. So they're going to have a contract signing on TV this week for their WrestleMania match. Triple H returned to commentary. Again, they sent him away for a segment. He came back right out, cracked a joke about how, I can get demoted and yet somehow get busier. And he was mocking a report in The Observer this week about Triple H getting what Meltzer claims some behind the scenes have referred to as a quiet demotion, going from the executive vice president of talent, live events, and creative to his new corporate title, which apparently started a number of months ago, but it was in some of the corporate filings and people started to pick up on it. His new title of executive vice president of global talent strategy and development. So he was moved out of the role as the head of talent relations. Some of those responsibilities have since been assigned to Vince McMahon's chief of staff. I love how Vince has a chief of staff. And instead, his main duties are now set to be focused on NXT. I don't know if that's a demotion or not. It could be a lateral move. I don't know. Maybe he's not being paid any less. To me, a demotion is also, you get your pay sliced a little bit. I don't think Triple H is hurting for money right now. Maybe Triple H wanted out of talent relations. I've heard that it's a thankless job. How many people who have been in that role, who have done interviews, who have said it's a thankless job? Jim Ross was the head of talent relations for years, and he would describe it that way. John Laurinaitis had it for a while. It sounds like a thankless job where you have to basically be the bad guy that Vince McMahon doesn't always want to be himself. So he'll go to the head of talent relations and tell them to deliver the bad news. Now, that doesn't really happen a lot these days, as much as it used to. WWE rarely fires people and lets them go, because they just want to hoard as much talent as they can. But, I don't envy Jim Ross, someone like Jim Ross having to be in that position 15, 20 years ago where, they want to fire somebody or get rid of somebody, and it's like, hey, JR, you go deliver the bad news. I'm not going to do it. You do it. That's your job. So maybe it was his choice. Maybe he was overwhelmed by all of the work that he has, and he's like, look, maybe we can pass some of these responsibilities on to someone else. So I wouldn't exactly look any more into this. People were looking for conspiracy theories here. What does this mean? Has Vince McMahon lost faith in Triple H? Is Triple H not going to be the next in line? People are reading far too much into this. This is, I think, a whole bunch of nothing. Jeff Hardy is back. The most anticlimactic return, I guess, since John Morrison randomly appeared a few months ago in Miz's dressing room after being away for like 8 years. It's like, there he is. Almost a year on the shelf after his knee surgery and then all the other personal stuff he had to deal with. And Kayla Braxton introduces my guest at this time, and there's Jeff Hardy. And voila, Jeff Hardy is back. And he's interrupted by King Corbin. Jeff informs him that they're going to have a match later in the show. We have another segment in the back where Daniel Bryan approaches Drew Gulak. They had a great professional wrestling match at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. Gulak lost. And I was saying at the time when I did my live stream, when I reviewed it, I said, I hope this isn't the end. Maybe Bryan now has a newfound respect for Gulak and they can wrestle again, or who end up being tag team partners for all we know. And Bryan told Gulak, he said, you told me that I had holes in my game, and you were right. And he asked Gulak if he would agree to teach him what those holes were. Sami Zayn, Cesaro, Shinsuke Nakamura, they showed up. And Zayn was mocking Bryan and gave him the chance to come join up with them. And anyway, this led to a match being made. Bryan said, I'll face Cesaro, I'll meet you out there. And he went out to the ring. Now, they replayed the entire SmackDown Tag Team title Elimination Chamber match from the pay-per-view. I turned away from the show at this point because I already saw the match. It was good, it wasn't that good. And I get that they had time to kill. They did the same thing after that Royal Rumble, post Royal Rumble episode of Raw that I mentioned, where Roman Reigns was in studio. They basically did the entire show from Titan Tower. They replayed the entire Royal Rumble match on TV. They had to find a way to kill time. They were caught flat-footed. They had to come up with some way to fill 3 hours. What better way than to play an hour of a Royal Rumble match? So they played the entire Elimination Chamber match here. Whatever. Again, I can't fault them because they were put in an impossible situation on very short notice. I hope this does not become a regular occurrence, though, where they just replay long matches from recent pay-per-views on television just to kill time. They did that on SmackDown on Fox, and they only had 2 hours to fill. Tomorrow night, they've got 3. We're going to have 3 hours of Raw, at least this week, if not every week going forward, in an empty performance center. They're going to have to find a way to kill time. I'd suggest, if they have no choice but to replay old matches, throw up a classic match. I never understood, this whole thing about they have this vast archive of classic content on the network, and I get that that isn't the big selling point for the WWE network. The people who are subscribed to the network are paying $9.99 to get all the pay-per-views, to get all the pay-per-views for one low price. That's the reason why most people subscribe to the network. The next reason would be you get NXT takeovers. They have some great documentary specials and stuff. The day of specials, the 24 specials, the Broken Skull sessions, Table for 3, stuff like that. But if you never promote the fact that you have this vast archive of classic content, not everything is just the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era, for fuck's sake. I mean, finally they're doing this series on Ruthless Aggression. I've only seen the Brock Lesnar episode so far, by the way. I've not seen the Evolution one. I have not seen the John Cena one. I have a lot of catching up to do, and with everything going on, I may be able to catch up with them soon enough. I didn't watch the Brock Lesnar one, though. I enjoyed it. But there's so many other eras of WWE, going back even farther, and other promotions too. They're doing a big content drop, I believe tomorrow, of new WCW Saturday Night episodes from 1993. You'll never hear WWE promoting it. And I never understood that. Maybe the reason people don't watch the classic content as much is because they're not really aware that you keep dropping new classic content. I certainly never hear them mention it or plug it on TV. So one of the benefits, if you've got a lot of downtime with everything going on for the next few weeks, the next few months, maybe use this as an opportunity to do a better job of promoting the fact that you've got all this classic wrestling content. And every time you trot out these legends on TV, like an Undertaker or a Ric Flair or a Sting or someone like that, don't forget where these guys came from. And maybe show clips or highlights or even a full match from a big WCW pay-per-view back in the early 90s or a big WWF pay-per-view back in the late 80s or the early 90s. Pick a big match, pick an exciting match where something big happened, show that on TV, and say, you want to see more? Subscribe to the WWE Network. We'll give you a free month. You've got this gigantic library of content that you could dive into. How do you know that there's not all this interest in the classic content if you never promote it? I'd like to see them do that. I know there may be younger fans who don't really care about that stuff from 30 years ago, but me personally, if they wanted to throw up an old match from back then, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't turn away either. I'd sit there and watch it. So Miz and Morrison were in the ring in the PC doing their promo segment in front of an empty crowd. And they were admiring their big win at the Elimination Chamber, and they were talking about their movies, John Morrison, during his time off, did this Dog the Bounty Hunter. Not Dog the Bounty Hunter. What did he call himself? He was a bounty hunter in this movie. Forgot what he called himself in the movie. That wasn't Dog. Buff the Bounty Hunter. I don't know what the fuck he called himself, but he did some bounty hunter movie, and Miz was talking about his Marine movies, and anyway, they were fine. I thought they were annoying, playing the role of annoying heels. Triple H noted that Miz and Morrison were excellent without crowd noise. Said it's because they never actually hear any crowd noise. He was ragging on everybody. Triple H was burying everybody on this show. He felt like he was in the zone. Triple H looked like he had a big smile on his face. He was really having a lot of fun. I think it took him back to his days 20 years ago when he was doing a lot more burying than he does today. He seemed to be very happy ragging on everybody. So Michael Cole talked about the rumors of Rob Gronkowski coming to WWE, and Mojo Rawley joined him and Triple H at the desk to hype up. Mojo's all about hype. And he was there to hype up Gronk coming to SmackDown next week. And he and Triple H then physically assaulted Michael Cole. They were shaking him. It was like two jocks roughing up the nerd and stuffing him in the locker in high school. Ryan Satin broke the news on WWE Backstage of Gronkowski being close to a deal with WWE. The deal is done. It's either done or just about done. And it's said to be a Ronda Rousey type of deal where he comes in, he does some big matches. It's not just like a one-time thing. I suppose he could do WrestleMania if there even is a WrestleMania this year. If they have like a battle royal, he could be part of it. He could win it. SummerSlam is in Boston. The belief is that he'll have a big role or a big match in Boston, which only makes sense. He played for the Patriots his entire career. He retired 2 years ago, but he was a Patriot his entire career. He'll be beloved if he walks out. And if they do, I hope that they actually have things back to normal by then, because you want to have that big crowd in Boston there to cheer for this guy when he walks out. He's only 30 years old. It's not like he's some completely broken down NFL guy in his mid-30s or late 30s. He's only 30. He's still a young guy. He retired young. I'm sure he's had a whole bunch of concussions and stuff. I don't think he's been injury-plagued too much. He's got a ton of charisma. He's a good fit for pro wrestling. I think a match here and there is fine. I know Steve Harvey isn't necessarily his biggest fan. One of the funniest things I've seen all year was actually on New Year's Eve. Steve Harvey has his New Year's Eve show, and Gronk was there. And he was kind of co-hosting for part of the show. And I don't know who did this, but somebody had put together this giant Lego mold of Steve Harvey. It actually looked like him. It looked like Steve Harvey. It was amazing. And I'm sure that he wanted to take that home with him and probably show it to his family and put it on display. And Gronk had other ideas. And I don't know what possessed him to do this. I would imagine he was probably 3 sheets to the wind at this point. But he's also Gronk, so he's just a fucking crazy guy. He puts the microphone down, and Steve Harvey's like, "What are you doing?" And he grabs the Lego mold of Steve Harvey. He grabs Lego Steve Harvey. He picks it up like a football, and he spikes it on the ground. And the Legos shatter all over the place. And the Legos were not the only thing that shattered. You could see Steve's heart shatter as the Legos crashed to the ground. He couldn't believe it. And then he said, "I don't want to work with this guy anymore." I think he was genuinely upset. I really think he wanted to take that home. And Gronk is like, "Nope." And he spikes it and just destroys the whole thing. I laughed, but I could see the guy's heart breaking as it was happening. So probably not a fan of Gronkowski is Steve Harvey. We had Daniel Bryan against Cesaro. I'd love to tell you that they went out there and had a 15-20 minute classic, even in front of an empty audience, but they only went about 5 or 6 minutes. So this was only a taste of what these two guys could do. It was good, but it never really had the chance to get going because they just really didn't give it a whole lot of time. There was this brutal, how Cesaro propels the guy up into the air and hits him with a European uppercut or a forearm on the way down. He did that to Bryan and wrecked the dude as Bryan fell to the ground. But Bryan pinned him with a cradle. And again, hopefully a taste of what these two guys can do down the road if you give them another 10 or 12 minutes. I think they could really put on a, like what Gulak and Bryan had at the pay-per-view. I'd love to see Cesaro and Bryan. Maybe do Cesaro and Bryan at WrestleMania. I'm sure they have other plans with probably Bryan and Gulak. Maybe they'll do a tag match or something. But this was fun. We had Jeff Hardy and King Corbin. The opposite of fun. Out comes King Corbin. And they're having a match, and Elias is on commentary. Because they're building to something at WrestleMania with Corbin and Elias. And Corbin is shouting down to Elias on commentary, "Why are you out here? What are you doing out here?" And so he's distracted. Jeff hits Corbin with what Michael Cole called the Twist of Fury, which is apparently the new name of the move unless Cole misspoke. Matt Hardy had to go on Twitter. He was answering a fan question and said, "It's not a question of ownership. Jeff and WWE," he says, "are 100% free to call it the Twist of Fate if that's what they want to do. I'm not stopping them from doing it. That's false. That's a lie. He would never do anything to hinder his brother," he says. Or gender. He would never hinder the gender. He hits the Twist of Fury, prompted Triple H to shout, "What a maneuver!" Swanton Bomb finishes things off. They're building to a Baron Corbin Elias match at WrestleMania. If ever there was a match that just screamed bathroom break, that's the match. Michael Cole interviewed John Cena. In the ring, Cole asked Cena about his match against The Fiend at WrestleMania. Mentioned that he beat Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 36 years ago, and that Wyatt blames his downward spiral on Cena. Cena says, "Far too many guys around here blame me for their failures. They're lazy, they're complacent." He noted that Bray became lazy after his loss at WrestleMania 30. And it's interesting how it's always my fault. He goes, "I always win. I always bury people." And then he rattled off a whole bunch of big matches that he lost. He says, "I lost to The Miz in the main event of WrestleMania. I lost to CM Punk at Money in the Bank. I lost to The Rock at WrestleMania. I was annihilated by Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. I was squashed by The Undertaker at WrestleMania." And you could also throw in, losses to Daniel Bryan at SummerSlam, AJ Styles at SummerSlam. Both clean losses. No controversy, no interference, no cheating. It's not even up for debate. John Cena has lost quite a lot of big matches. Nobody is debating that. It's not about the individual matches, though. It's about the important matches. And he won a few that he had no business winning. That's the issue. The Wyatt match being one of them. And when he lost those matches, every single match that he mentioned there against, "I lost to The Miz," which was because of The Rock, but "I lost to The Miz, I lost to this guy, I lost to that guy." Cena was already a made guy. He was already an established name. He was the biggest name in the company. So there's a big difference between talking about, losing big matches like that if you're John Cena, as opposed to Bray Wyatt, who, for all intents and purposes at the time, was a nobody. He was still a relatively new guy looking to break through. A win over John Cena at WrestleMania would have gone quite the distance in helping him break through. And that was really before Cena started losing a lot of matches. Yeah, he had already lost to Cena, to Miz and The Rock by that point. He had lost some matches, but that win would have meant a lot more to Bray Wyatt at that time than the win meant to John Cena. And I know that they ended up having two more. There was a cage match. I think Wyatt won the cage match, which was that goofy finish with the kid that scared John. We made the jokes about how he's scared of children. Now we know why. And then, of course, to end the feud, Cena won that match. But that WrestleMania win still sticks out to this day. But there's a big difference. Cena can talk about, or they could have Cena talk about all these things about, I lose a lot of matches. But that's you're not even getting the point. It's not about the individual matches. It's about more than that. Cole wondered why John Cena even accepted Bray Wyatt's challenge. Cena said the fans should not invest in Bray Wyatt. They should be investing in Drew McIntyre and Tommaso Ciampa, Matt Riddle, Velveteen Dream. Invest in those names, he said. Wyatt has already had 5 or 6 chances. He doesn't deserve another one. He is a failure. That is the message that John Cena was conveying here about Bray. In case you didn't know, Bray Wyatt is winning this match. I cannot imagine that John Cena would have John Cena burying him like this on television in promos and then go on and beat him again at WrestleMania. So if there's one of the 3 or 4 big matches being promoted this year for WrestleMania where I am confident in who the winner will be, after listening to this, it's the fact that Bray Wyatt will beat John Cena. Of course, that is if WrestleMania even goes on. The only thing that will deprive Bray Wyatt of a win is a virus. Otherwise, I think it's safe to say they're setting up for Wyatt to get his win back here. Mr. Rogers Wyatt was in the crowd listening. And he got into the ring and he was cutting his own promo on John Cena. He said, "I'm not sick. John, you're the one who's sick." Said Cena doesn't care about the future. He only cares about himself. He only cares about being in the spotlight. And Wyatt thinks about that loss to Cena 6 years ago. He thinks about it all the time. He says that the voices in his head after that wouldn't stop. So instead, he embraced them. He started listening to them. The voices took his broken world and turned it into the Firefly Funhouse. So they went nose to nose, face to face, and Wyatt asked Cena to let me in. And footage of the Fiend flashed on screen. They cut back to a darkened PC, and you heard that piped in Wyatt laughter in the background as they went off the air. I thought the segment was really well done. We can quibble about the content and the substance of what Cena said. I already talked about that, but I thought both guys did a hell of a job. I thought it worked better in this empty building than it would have probably in front of a live audience. So I thought this was really good. And I still, though, after watching all of this, I have not changed my mind. I still maintain that this would have been better with the Universal title at stake and John Cena chasing after title number 17. He could have cut that same promo and talked about how he doesn't deserve it. You know, instead of talking about how don't invest in this guy, invest in the future, it could have been he doesn't deserve it. Why do I want the championship? Why do I want to win title number 17? Because it disgusts me that this guy can stand here and say all these things about how what I did to him 6 years ago and all that, and he's the champion and he walks around. That's not what a champion does. I have to do this. I have to get that belt off of him because he doesn't deserve it. And then you have the dueling stories. On the one hand, Cena trying to chase the record. On the other hand, Bray Wyatt trying to avenge his loss at WrestleMania. Something's got to give. They both can't get what they want. Only one guy can win. That's the story. I have not changed my mind. This would have been better with title number 17 being part of the story. But what they did here I thought was very good. You know, it's not like the match. I'm not a fan of the story. I just think it would have been served a lot better. So this felt like a novelty show. I enjoyed it as something different. The idea of doing this every week, 3 times a week, doing it on Monday, doing it on Wednesday, doing it on Friday in front of no audience at the PC for what could be a while, it's going to wear thin real quick. You know, the talent, they need an audience to play off of, but they're stuck. So as long as this continues, it's really the only option they have.